A big part of Vipassana is coming to understanding of how to actually develop equanimity within ourselves, right? We spoke a little bit earlier how, a lot of people are thinking that external circumstances, once they get the right pieces in the puzzle to arrange in a certain way, then it's going to give them the life they want, the picture of their experience that they want. But it's actually, and Vipassana teaches that it's coming to right relationship with our own craving and aversion. So I'm curious for your own personal path, when you experience craving and when you experience aversion to life, like how do you navigate that and how do you support other people in coming to proper awareness with that?
Yeah, great point, great question. I think ultimately coming back to that idea of observing and not reacting is key. When we react to something, we just give it more power. We kind of etch it into the stone a little deeper. So the more and more we can just observe and let it pass and come back to this idea of impermanence, that no matter what I'm feeling in this moment will eventually pass away, I think then we can see it from a bigger perspective and eventually it loses power over us, whatever that thing is. So, in Vipassana, the reason I think I was attracted to it, besides, being an initiation in my family to sit a 10-day at the age of 18, is because it's really real. It's almost like a science, experimentation with observation. That's what science is. And what I've found that, and I think what Goenka speaks to is that when you're observing your breath and your bodily sensations, you're actually in fact observing the deepest level of your mind. And that was kind of the bridge that really made sense to me. It was like a science. When you have a thought, when you have like an angry thought or a happy thought or any emotion, it results in some sort of physical manifestation into either a change in your breath or into a change in bodily sensation. So let's say you have an angry thought and you get really hot, you start sweating, your breath starts to,
Right.
These are ways to kind of catch it because it's a little abstract to just say, let me observe anger. Usually by the time you're observing anger, you're already throwing that first punch. So I think observing the breath and bodily sensations, the biggest insight is you're in fact observing the deepest level of your nervous system and your mind, and that allows you to really harness control, have self-control, and ultimately direct your life. So for me, when something happens to me or I feel something come up, I have that wisdom to kind of just sit back. Okay, let me feel this. You're not avoiding it. You're not ignoring it. And let's just see how long it lasts. And, it might not go away. That's the thing is people think when something happens to you, you observe, you don't react, it just disappears. But no, the next time it comes back, it has a little less power over you. And you keep that practice and then eventually you take out that impurity or that reactionary tendency that you had from the root. And ultimately, this is how you purify your mind and how you move into a more still and peaceful place.
I really resonated when I first heard Goenka's teachings about how we accumulate these sanskaras and these impressions kind of in our deep subconscious mind and how those will continually find manifestations in our conscious reality until they're dealt with. It's like rotten roots are always going to lead to rotten fruits. And having that proper awareness then allows you to use tools like the breath and simply becoming aware of what is happening within your body and the sensation of your body to purify those, right? And It's always kind of hardest. There's like that saying, I think the war is won after the hardest battle. It's like it's always most difficult right before you actually release it, And so like coming over our conditioning, finding dissolution to those programs, often it's a path of more difficulty first. It's so difficult and it's uncomfortable in those moments.
I think Vipassana is probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, still to this day. And I've ran a marathon without training, and have had some other hardships in life, but I still think that Vipassana is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I think the hardest part is just being with yourself and sitting in silence. I think it's so easy to distract ourselves. It's so easy to go on our phones and, we can travel all over the world and there's constantly entertainment. But just to be with yourself can sometimes be scary. The stuff that kind of reveals and the same thought patterns that you have, over and over again keep coming up until you finally face them.
There are just so many valuable lessons, and this is, slowly becoming a Vipassana ad, which I'm actually not mad at because it's been so valuable for I think both of our lives. And I just think it's so important for people to carve out, if it's 10 days, 5 days, being able to just take time away, and that's like nothing in the grand scheme of what your life is, but the ripples that has is just such an exponential factor.
Exactly. And I think that, it doesn't have to be even Vipassana. It just could be, you deciding to meditate for 5 minutes when you wake up in the morning or even before you go to bed at night, and just seeing what that does for your life. Because a lot of people that are probably listening to this podcast, I'm assuming, are wanting to increase their well-being or their health or better themselves. And usually the way to do that is to go for the mind. I think that, Harvard, there's so many new modern studies and some amazing guests that you have spoke to it. About stress being one of the biggest factors of our health. Stress manifests into disease, and if we really want to increase our health, we have to probably focus on alleviating that stress. And one of the best ways to do that is to meditate or practice yoga, because the first step to any meditation is focus and concentration. And when you can focus on one thing, usually you stop focusing on everything else, and you can start to get rid of that pattern of thinking the same thoughts that we have every single day, which are usually the same repeated thoughts, until we can break that cycle.